Greetings and welcome to the 50th Annual Copper Cannon Camp Auction. I'm Ellen Ferrelli. Tony Ferrelli and I spent 53 wonderful years together, and we have 3 great kids. But we lost Tony in April. Next to me is our middle son, Matt, who was a counselor at Camp Copper Cannon.
Thanks, Mom. So my experience at Copper Cannon was really unique. For all intents and purposes, my dad guilted me into taking the job over the summer as a camp counselor. I really had no idea what I was getting into, but to this day, I believe it was the hardest job I have ever had. And I had taught middle school special ed for 15 years. You know, as camp counselors, we worked 18 to 20 hours per day for the entire summer. I was always exhausted by the end of the night. And right when I finally laid my head down on the pillow, I would hear little itty bitty feet on the cabin floor and a shy little voice say something like, "I need to use the potty." So down the hill we would go at midnight to go and use the potty. I learned so many valuable lessons that summer, and now only as an adult do I know why my dad insisted I get this experience. I will forever be grateful for my dad pushing me into it.
Thanks, Matt. When I was asked to make an introduction, I was delighted to accept, but I had to reach out to Franconia friends, some of whom I hadn't seen since we left Franconia in '76. I also had a piece from Tony, who had written it ages ago from Fort Lauderdale, all about Hamilton Ford, whose dream it was to have exactly what exists today in Bethlehem. Tony relates this story about Ham. The first Copper Cannon auction took place in what was called the Orange Bear Lounge in the Franconia Inn at 7 o'clock on a Saturday. Tony was the manager of the inn for years. He and Ham got together about 30 items that would be auctioned by auctioneer George Clement. George started right on time, 7:30. All the auction items were gone. Ham turned to me and said, "What? No." I asked the audience if they had anything to donate to the auction. Items flooded in: skis and poles, skiing lessons, jewelry right off people's fingers, necks, and hands, bales of hay, and much more, including a truck full of prize manure. When I handed him the $1,000, tears came into his eyes, and that's how I knew how happy he was. Kathy Lovett contributed here too. Kathy is the daughter of the late Bill Lovett, who everybody in Franconia knew. And she tells this story. My dad, Bill, and I were the first staff on Copper Cannon. I was 16. My favorite story involved my dad and me taking the kids on day trips. Gregory was 3 years old. He was placed in a Catholic facility for little ones who don't have any parents to stay with. He hadn't been with the nuns in Rochester home for very long, and the nuns told us that he hadn't spoken a word since he arrived. My dad drove the bus, Kathy says, and put Gregory in the front of the bus. Soon, Gregory took Dad's hand while we were walking. A few days later, he started to whisper to my dad. When it was almost time to go back home, he was chatting happily and playing with other kids. Kathy says, "I think that is the best part of magic of Copper Cannon, being in nature and being with good people." I plan to stop here, but I must tell you about Ham Ford and his backhoe. He used to take the kids one at a time for a ride on that backhoe in the meadow. One day, he was taking the kids for rides. He spotted a little girl who seemed to be all alone, without friends, isolated. He chose her last. And when he got her on the backhoe, he showed her how to drive it. Then he got off, and the girl drove back to all the kids watching and Ham walking alongside. She was an instant hit with the group, and another Copper Cannon sweet story. Thank you for having us here. Let's get deep down into our pockets and do something.
And this will be one of the best Copper Cannon auctions yet. And we will be fulfilling Ham Ford's lifelong dream. Thanks so much for all that you plan to give and will be giving to Copper Cannon Camp.
Thank you.